with 22 and then, because it's really small. All right, Charles, don't move.
Okay, let's do it.
Ha, Charles, get up.
The U.S. Navy has to be one of the most diverse branches as far as amphibious operations, aircraft, ships, ground elements that are able to be out there, such as Navy SEALs and things like that, where essentially it is a vast land of what is in realm of capability. However, when that is done, a lot of times there are mass communication specialists and public affairs officers that capture this information and try to convey it to the public in order to try and make sure that people that are taxpayers and veterans and families know what's going on with those tax dollars. And sometimes that leads to embarrassment because there's a major or sometimes even minor disconnect on some of the things that can be posted and lead to mass embarrassment, such as this photo right here. That's because on the official U.S. Navy page here, saying highlighting the amazing work of our U.S. Navy sailors from engaging in practice gun shoots, conducting other things like that, as far as that goes. And you can see there's other photos of somebody with a flashlight here, also conducting some kind of inspection. Some look at here, can't see what it is exactly. I'm not an expert. And somebody on the bridge there going over the walkie-talkie. However, the main one that caused issues was this one of this commanding officer firing off this weapon. And that's because if you are not an expert, just like me, it was known in the comments here that essentially there were three major things wrong with this. The first one was the optics were totally messed up in this situation where it was reversed, so he would never be able to see anything. Secondly, if you can see the positioning of the rifle on the shoulder, a lot of people were saying it was way too high as far as it goes. And third off here, you can see the elbow is cocked out like a chicken wing, trying to be like a Rambo Navy SEAL movie type of action here. And on top of that, the grip on the front, people were saying was too close. I'm not an expert on that, but essentially that made people very pissed off that the Navy would have a photo like this released. As a result, everybody stockpiled on top of the U.S. Navy, including another branch. But first off, the gun expert, which is Garand, which his entire content on YouTube is about testing these out as far as seeing how accurate they are, new equipment, being like the go-to guy of every toy that you would ever imagine, and essentially testing it against his dummy and whatever else is out there. He had made one comment, and is the top comment because I think he had so much credibility in the discussion around this sphere. And that's because he just writes LMAO and it is 8,900 likes as far as this goes, which may not seem like a lot, but for a U.S. Navy post, this is some of the most engagement they could ever get. Even people like Tim Kennedy posted on his Instagram and said, "This is the most Navy photo of all times. I love me some," I don't know what this brand says, "seriously, some of the best glass in the market, but no matter how good the scope is, it sucks when it's mounted backwards." And I did actually reach out to some gunners mates, people that are specialized in small weaponry or firearms in that regard. And I was like, how could this even be possible? And they were like, we have no idea because there's literally arrows which tell you how this is supposed to be attached. And I was like, that would sound like some pretty basic common sense. And the fact this guy would not be able to see probably as well as he should. I mean, they're shooting at targets that are out in the water per se here. So I don't know how accurate you would want to be other than just firing a few rounds for the ego boost and maybe for the photo op. And this has even led to some brotherly feud here across public affairs from the Marine Corps to the Navy because they have done shots fired on the official Marine Corps Instagram at the U.S. Navy, poking fun at this entire thing. The Marines had posted here, it says clear sight picture. It says Marines assigned to Bravo Company Battalion and goes on about this. And essentially people were throwing shade as well, where this guy says, whoever posted this knew what they were doing, throwing shade on the Navy. And that's Germs 89. And sight marks is well played, Marines, well played. And this even led the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Navy Public Affairs were so embarrassed they took that post down. And even when they tried to post the next post to try and, I guess, divert the attention somewhere else, it was still the same shenanigans all over again, even on their other post. And that's because this says from Paul's and Summits and says, hey, remember that time you posted a picture of a sailor holding a rifle with the optic attached backwards 2 posts ago? And someone else also said, no one will ever forget why y'all posted. And Sight Mark, as an avid commenter, said, we will not forget. And I have to just give some kind of credibility of like, I'm a Navy person that has served in Marine Corps capacity over with them for 4 years, and we were made to shoot on a regular basis with that. However, I have to give credit that not a majority of the Navy are going to have this opportunity, and it depends heavily on experience and what your certain roles are, and that is where this commanding officer is finding himself. And that's because this is commanding officer of the USS John McCain DDG-56. And it says here that he served as the division officer aboard USS Baton on the Amphib. It says weapons and executive officer aboard Patrol Coastal Crew Hotel, and combat systems and weapons officer aboard USS Hopper DDG-70, and executive officer aboard USS John McCain. And from what you hear from this, he was the weapons officer. I want to remind you guys, like, he is not the one that is physically, as an officer, getting his hands dirty, maintaining these weapons, putting them together, things like that. There's a lot more of the high-level scope this guy is doing that is not involved with daily operations and knowing how these things operate. And he's served in other capacities as well that were not always in line with that. So, and now we look at this of who could we take blame for this photo, because they actually give credit for this. And I want to say, we got to give a little respect here for 1 second, and that's because they tagged them. And it says MC3 Kevin Tang, MC3 Samantha Allman, MCSA Aaron Haro Gonzalez, and MC2 Jesse Turner. Give context with that, you have one E5, some E4s, and even an E2 that were involved with the caption of this and publishing this stuff. I will let you guys know from my knowledge, as I've talked to these public affairs people, as someone that's engaged with this because of the channel that you're watching right here, these things are brought up through the channels of their own public affairs, and they are submitted to higher echelon to post on the U.S. Navy page like this. People that are new to the Navy, probably with only a couple years in, are not going to have the knowledge like this of understanding what's going on, of they're taking the pictures and essentially just trying to make sure they're capturing it, where their job is to make sure exposure, lighting, editing, the captions that go with it. They probably have so many other things going on. They're not thinking about the context of the picture itself, and probably hoping that that just gets caught upper hand. And the people that are giving this weapon to the commanding officer are handing something that is readily available for use and correct, right? They're not expecting that they are going to have to correct this afterwards or say that's a bad photo, even though we know that could happen. However, should be known that there are mass communication specialists, combat camera people from all the branches that do public affairs are supposed to have some kind of wave top knowledge in order to be sure of like what's accurate, not accurate, and making sure it follows regulations, along with accuracy as well, which I think is important. And like I said in the beginning of the video, they are covering various things. Could be Navy SEALs, could be ships, could be aircraft, could be all these different things that they're kind of having very wave top knowledge of it, that essentially I would say maybe getting some kind of expert to review this from each community before we publish things would be difficult and a lot more red tape. But it might be important for something like this. Just putting that out there. But I'd like to say this is diffuse responsibility, in my opinion, across, various degrees and percentages across all these people. But I'd like to know what you guys think, because that's where the conversation continues, as always, down in the comments below. But as always, if you guys like what I cover here on the channel, hit me up over on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.